Back in 2007, the county moved the old Silver Falls Crematorium. They pushed it 5 miles deeper into the jagged ravines of Blackwood Mountain, selling the original plot to developers. Now, there's a luxury gated community sitting right where the old cooling racks used to be. Real estate agents call it scenic, but locals call it a graveyard. I don't care how high the property value gets. You couldn't pay me to sleep on soil that soaked up 60 years of human grief. The new facility was hidden behind dense pines and gray fog. It didn't need to be near the city lights. It thrived in the silence of the woods. But for those of us working the overnight delivery shifts, that relocation turned a boring job into a nightly descent into a nightmare. Logistics at 1 a.m. is a lonely business. It means being on a bike or a small truck, navigating narrow, unlit mountain passes where the only things moving are the shadows of the Douglas firs. Our first driver was a local guy, a hunter who knew those woods like the back of his hand. He even picked up a few delivery stops at the staff housing units right next to the crematorium. He lasted 6 months. Then one Tuesday his bike slid off a perfectly dry, straight stretch of road. He survived, but he was white as a sheet when they found him. He quit before he even left the hospital. We thought it was just a freak accident. We were wrong. His replacement was a 20-something kid named Tyler. He was the skeptic type, all bravado and heavy metal. He bolted a high-intensity LED bar to his handlebars and laughed at our warnings. For 2 months Tyler was fine. Then came the morning I found him sitting in the depot at 4 a.m., staring at a wall. His engine still idling. He told me he was hitting the stretch near Miller's Creek, a desolate gorge sandwiched between a rock face and a drop-off. His lights caught a figure on the shoulder of the road. It was a woman. She was wearing a vibrant vintage crimson dress and black heels. She was walking away from him, the rhythm of her steps echoing against the canyon walls. Click, click, click. Confused as to why a woman would be in cocktail attire in the middle of a wilderness preserve at 2 a.m., Tyler sped up to offer help. But no matter how much gas he gave it, the distance stayed exactly the same. She remained 15 yards ahead, a blur of blood-red fabric just out of reach of his high beams. Panic finally flared. Tyler slammed on the brakes, pulled a U-turn, and began racing back toward the valley. That's when the cabin of his truck went ice cold. He glanced in his rearview mirror. The woman was inches from his tailgate. She wasn't running. She was walking backward, her long, wet black hair draped over her face, swaying in the wind of his speed. He didn't stop until he hit the neon lights of a 24-hour gas station. He handed me his keys that morning and never looked back. I tried to pass the route to a contractor named Miller. He sent one of his guys to handle the staff housing units. A week later Miller called me, screaming. His driver had been walking up a darkened stairwell in the apartment complex when a heavy, industrial-grade white bedsheet dropped from the ceiling, wrapping around him like a spider's web. He struggled for minutes, clawing at the fabric that seemed to tighten and breathe against his face. He didn't find anyone playing a prank. He just found an empty hallway and a lingering smell of formaldehyde. Eventually I had to cover the route myself. One October night, near the old sawmill curve, a fog rolled in that defied physics. It didn't drift. It surged out of the ground like steam. It moved between the trees like a sentient creature. Where the fog touched, the world died. The sound of the engine seemed to vanish into a vacuum. Just 10 feet away, outside the mist, a gale-force wind was screaming through the pines, tossing branches and debris. But inside the fog, not a single hair on my arm moved. The air was heavy, dense with the weight of something that shouldn't have been there. I stood paralyzed, caught between the roaring wind of the living world and the suffocating silence of the dead. If you ever visit the Pacific Northwest, people will tell you to try the wild blackberries that grow near Blackwood Mountain. They say they're the largest, sweetest berries in the state. But I've stood by that crematorium. I've watched the gray ash belching from the great stack, drifting like a fine snow over the hills, settling on every leaf and fruit for miles. The locals say the fruit is so sweet because of the mineral-rich soil. But after what I've seen on those roads, I'll never touch another berry from those hills again. Not after knowing what and who makes that soil so rich.